What would you do if your entire family forgot your 80th birthday while posting elaborate celebrations for pets, friends, and coworkers on social media? Well, let me tell you what I did when my children proved that everything matters more to them than their mother, and how I made sure they'd never forget another birthday again. My name is Betty, and at 80 years old, I had experienced my share of disappointments, heartbreaks, and family betrayals. But nothing had prepared me for the devastating silence that greeted my milestone birthday. A day that should have been filled with love, celebration, and recognition of 8 decades of life, sacrifice, and devotion to the family that apparently couldn't remember I existed. The day started like any other, which should have been my first warning that something was terribly wrong. I woke up at 6 a.m., as I had for the past 60 years, made my coffee, and settled into my favorite chair to watch the sunrise through my kitchen window. But this wasn't just any morning. This was the morning of my 80th birthday. A milestone that comes once in a lifetime and deserves recognition from the people who matter most. I waited for the phone to ring. I waited for someone to knock on my door. I waited for a text message, an email, a card in the mail, any sign that the 3 children I had raised, loved and sacrificed for remembered that today was special. But the silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the ticking of the grandfather clock my late husband had given me for our 25th anniversary. By 10 a.m., I began to make excuses for them. Maybe they were planning a surprise party. Maybe they wanted to call later in the day, when they could talk longer. Maybe they were coordinating something special and didn't want to spoil it with premature phone calls. By noon, the excuses were wearing thin, but hope still flickered in my chest like a candle fighting against the wind. By 3 p.m., I realized that my 80th birthday was going to pass unnoticed by every single member of my immediate family. But what broke my heart completely was what I discovered when I checked social media to distract myself from the growing certainty that I had been forgotten. My daughter Margaret had posted 12 photos of her co-worker's retirement party, complete with heartfelt captions about celebrating milestones and honoring people who matter. The party looked lovely: cake, decorations, thoughtful speeches, and dozens of people gathered to show appreciation for someone's life achievement. My son David had shared a video of his neighbor's golden wedding anniversary celebration, adding his own comment about how family is everything and how important it is to show up for the people you love. My youngest daughter, Patricia, had posted an elaborate photo album from her dog's birthday party. Yes, her dog's birthday party, complete with a custom cake, party hats, and a caption about how everyone deserves to feel special on their birthday. Every single one of my children had taken time to acknowledge, celebrate, and publicly honor other people's milestones, while completely forgetting that their own mother was celebrating the most significant birthday of her life. They had all been active on social media that day. They had all posted about the importance of celebrating others. They had all demonstrated that they knew how to show love and appreciation when they chose to. They just hadn't chosen to show any of that love and appreciation to me. As I sat in my living room that evening, surrounded by birthday cards I had sent myself years ago just to practice the ritual of celebration, I realized that this wasn't just an oversight or a scheduling conflict. This was a statement about my worth in their lives, my importance in their thoughts, and my place in their priorities. After 80 years of putting my children first, sacrificing my own needs for their happiness, and building my entire identity around being a good mother, I had discovered that they couldn't spare 5 minutes to acknowledge my existence on the most important day of my year. But what my children didn't know was that their mother's 80th birthday wasn't just any birthday. It was the birthday that would change everything about our family dynamics forever. Because sometimes being forgotten is the greatest gift someone can give you. It clarifies exactly where you stand, exactly what you're worth to them, and exactly what you need to do to protect your dignity going forward. As the clock struck midnight and my 80th birthday officially ended without a single acknowledgement from any of my children, I made a decision that would ensure they never forgot another important date in my life. The morning after my forgotten birthday, I did something I had never done before in my 80 years of life. I became a detective investigating my own children's priorities through their social media activities. What I discovered over the next few days would make their oversight of my birthday look like simple forgetfulness, rather than the systematic pattern of neglect it actually represented. I started with Margaret's Facebook page, scrolling back through months of posts to understand how she spent her emotional energy and attention. What I found was a detailed record of everything she considered worthy of celebration, recognition, and public acknowledgement. In the past 3 months alone, Margaret had posted birthday wishes for 17 different people. Co-workers, neighbors, high school friends she barely spoke to, her mailman, her hairdresser, and even the barista at her favorite coffee shop. Each post included photos, heartfelt messages about the person's importance in her life, and elaborate descriptions of their positive qualities. She had celebrated her book club's anniversary, her yoga instructor's promotion, her dentist's retirement, and her gardener's grandson's graduation. She had posted sympathy messages for acquaintances who lost pets, congratulations for people who got new jobs, and encouragement for friends who were starting diets. Margaret's social media presence painted a picture of someone who was deeply invested in acknowledging and celebrating the lives of dozens of people. She was thoughtful, consistent, and generous with her attention and affection. Except when it came to her own mother. David's social media told a similar story. His Instagram was filled with posts celebrating other people's achievements, milestones, and important moments. He had posted elaborate tributes to his business partners, his golf buddies, his college roommates, and even his mechanic's 25th work anniversary. But more revealing than who David chose to celebrate was how he celebrated them. His posts weren't quick, thoughtless messages. They were carefully crafted tributes that showed real thought and effort. He wrote personal stories about how these people had impacted his life. He chose flattering photos and meaningful quotes. He tagged mutual friends to ensure maximum visibility for his celebrations. David clearly understood the importance of making people feel valued and appreciated on their special days. He had the skills, the social media presence, and the emotional intelligence to create meaningful celebrations. He just didn't use any of those skills for his mother. Patricia's social media was perhaps the most painful to review, because it revealed how much time, energy, and creativity she invested in celebrating everyone except me. Her Facebook page was like a professional event planning portfolio, showcasing elaborate celebrations she had organized for friends, coworkers, and even acquaintances. In the past 6 months, Patricia had thrown birthday parties for her boss, her workout partner, her children's teachers, and at least a dozen other people. Each event was photographed extensively, with Patricia proudly displaying the decorations she had created, the cakes she had ordered, and the thoughtful gifts she had chosen. But the post that broke my heart was the one about her dog's birthday party. Patricia had spent hours creating a celebration for a pet that included custom decorations, a specially ordered cake shaped like a bone, party hats for all the attending dogs, and goodie bags for their owners. She had invited 20 people to celebrate her dog's birthday and had posted 47 photos of the event. Her dog, who doesn't even understand what a birthday is, had received more attention, celebration, and public recognition than her 80-year-old mother had received for the most significant milestone of her life. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing than simple neglect. As I scrolled through months of social media posts, I realized that my children had developed a pattern of celebrating everyone except their own family members. They threw parties for coworkers, but not cousins. They posted elaborate tributes to friends, but not relatives. They remembered every acquaintance's birthday but forgot their mother's. It was as if they had decided that family relationships didn't require the same level of attention and effort as social relationships. They took our love for granted while working hard to earn approval from people who mattered far less to their lives and their future. My children had become so focused on maintaining their social media image as thoughtful, caring people that they had forgotten to actually be thoughtful and caring to the people who loved them most. But the most revealing discovery came when I found a group chat between my 3 children that had been accidentally posted to Margaret's story. In the screenshot, I could see them discussing someone's birthday party and coordinating their gifts and attendance. The birthday party they were planning wasn't for me. It was for David's boss's wife, someone they had met exactly twice. My children had been actively planning a celebration for a near stranger while completely forgetting their mother's 80th birthday. That was the moment I realized that their oversight wasn't accidental, forgetful, or the result of busy schedules. It was the natural consequence of years of taking me for granted while investing their emotional energy in relationships that felt more rewarding, more challenging, or more socially beneficial. As I closed my laptop that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Clarity. I finally understood exactly where I stood in my children's lives, exactly what I meant to them, and exactly what needed to change if I was going to spend my remaining years being treated with the respect and consideration I deserved. My children thought they could ignore me without consequences, celebrate everyone else while forgetting me, and continue receiving my unconditional love while offering nothing in return. They were about to learn that even an 80-year-old mother has limits, and that some lessons are too important to be taught gently. For the next 2 weeks, I carefully planned my response to being forgotten on my 80th birthday. This wasn't going to be an emotional outburst or a guilt-inducing confrontation. This was going to be a strategic demonstration of what it feels like to be overlooked by the people who claim to love you. The first step was to stop doing all the things I had been doing to maintain our family relationships without any reciprocal effort from my children. For decades I had been the one calling them, remembering their important dates, sending cards and gifts, and making sure our family stayed connected. I had been putting in 90% of the effort, while they contributed maybe 10% and assumed that balance was normal. Starting immediately, I stopped calling my children. No more daily check-ins with Margaret about her work stress. No more weekly calls to David asking about his golf game and his latest business ventures. No more regular conversations with Patricia about her children's activities and achievements. I also stopped sending the cards, gifts, and care packages that had been a constant part of our relationship for 60 years. No more birthday cards mailed 2 weeks early to ensure they arrived on time. No more Christmas presents carefully chosen and wrapped with love. No more thinking of you care packages when they mentioned being busy or stressed. Most importantly, I stopped remembering and acknowledging their important dates. When Margaret's birthday arrived 3 weeks after mine, I let it pass without a card, a call, or even a text message. When David's work anniversary came up, I didn't send the congratulatory note I had been sending for 15 years. When Patricia's daughter had a dance recital, I didn't ask for photos or offer encouragement. The silence was immediate and telling. Margaret called me after her birthday, confused and slightly hurt that I hadn't acknowledged the day. "Mom, did you forget my birthday?" "No, Margaret, I didn't forget. I just decided to handle it the same way you handled mine." "What do you mean?" "I mean I let it pass without acknowledgement. The same way you let my 80th birthday pass without acknowledgement." There was a long pause before Margaret said, "Mom, I thought we talked about this. I was meaning to call you, but I got busy with work and—" "Margaret, we never talked about this. You forgot my birthday completely, and now you're upset that I forgot yours. Do you see the double standard?" "But Mom, it's different. You're my mother. You're supposed to remember my birthday. And you're my daughter, Margaret. You're supposed to remember mine too." The conversation ended with Margaret hanging up, apparently unable to process the idea that forgetting birthdays might be hurtful regardless of who does the forgetting. David's reaction was even more revealing. When I didn't send my usual congratulatory note for his work anniversary, he called to ask if I was okay. "Mom, you always send me a card for my work anniversary." I was worried something might be wrong. "Nothing's wrong, David. I just decided to put the same energy into remembering your achievements that you put into remembering mine." "What are you talking about?" "David, you forgot my 80th birthday completely. You didn't call, text, send a card, or even acknowledge that it happened. But you're calling me because I forgot to send you a work anniversary card." "Mom, that's not the same thing. Work anniversaries are important for career development. Birthdays are just birthdays." "David, my 80th birthday happens once in a lifetime. Your work anniversary happens every year. If you think your annual work milestone is more important than my lifetime milestone, then you clearly don't understand what actually matters." David's response was to explain that he had been busy and stressed, that he meant to call but kept forgetting, and that I was being unreasonable to expect him to remember every little thing. Every little thing. My 80th birthday was a little thing, but the most dramatic reaction came from Patricia, when I didn't ask for photos of her daughter's dance recital. "Mom, Emma's recital was beautiful. I can't believe you didn't even ask how it went." "Patricia, I'm sorry I missed it. I've been busy lately."
Busy with what?
"You're retired. What could you possibly be busy with?" "I've been busy learning to prioritize my attention the same way my children prioritize theirs." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm focusing on people who remember that I exist, the same way you focus on people who remember that you exist." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. Family is different. Family doesn't require the same kind of attention as other relationships." "Patricia, if family doesn't require attention, then why are you upset that I didn't give attention to Emma's recital?" The conversation revealed the fundamental flaw in my children's thinking. They believed that family relationships should be unconditional and effortless, requiring no maintenance or reciprocal investment from them. while simultaneously expecting constant attention and recognition from me. They wanted all the benefits of having a devoted mother without any of the responsibilities of being devoted children. After 2 weeks of experiencing what it felt like to be forgotten and overlooked, my children were beginning to understand the pain they had caused me. But understanding the pain wasn't enough. I needed them to understand that their behavior had consequences, and that those consequences would continue until they chose to change. The next phase of my plan would make it impossible for them to ignore the lesson I was teaching, or dismiss it as temporary punishment that would eventually end regardless of their behavior. By the end of the 3rd week, my children had moved from confusion to frustration to something approaching panic, as they realized that my withdrawal from their lives wasn't a temporary emotional reaction, but a permanent change in our family dynamics. The wake-up call came when Margaret needed my help with something that had been a regular part of our relationship for years. Free babysitting for her children during a work emergency. "Mom, I have a crisis at work and need to stay late tonight. Can you pick up the kids from school and watch them until Mark gets home?" For 15 years I had been Margaret's backup childcare, stepping in whenever she had work conflicts, social obligations, or simply needed a break from parenting. I had never said no, never made her feel guilty for asking, and never expected anything in return except the assumption that this help would be available whenever she needed it. "I'm sorry, Margaret, but I'm not available tonight." "What do you mean you're not available? You never have plans on weekday evenings." "I mean, I'm not available to provide free babysitting services anymore." "Mom, this is an emergency. I really need your help." "Margaret, my 80th birthday was important to me, and I really needed my family to remember it. We all have needs that don't get met. You're seriously going to punish my children because you're mad about your birthday?" "I'm not punishing anyone, Margaret. I'm simply prioritizing my time and energy the same way you prioritize yours. You prioritize work emergencies, social obligations, and other people's needs over your relationship with me. I'm learning to prioritize relationships with people who value my presence in their lives." Margaret had to scramble to find alternative childcare, paying a babysitter $60 for services I had been providing free for 15 years. David's moment of realization came when he needed help with something that had become routine over the past decade: my annual financial contribution to his children's Christmas gifts. Every year for the past 10 years I had given David $500 to help him buy elaborate Christmas presents for his children. It wasn't something he asked for directly. It was something I offered because I wanted my grandchildren to have special holidays, and because I knew David's budget was stretched thin during the holiday season. "Mom, it's almost December. Should I give you my list of what the kids want for Christmas this year?" "I won't be contributing to Christmas gifts this year, David." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm redirecting my holiday budget toward people who remember that I exist throughout the year." "Mom, you can't be serious. The kids look forward to the gifts you help buy them." "David, I looked forward to my family remembering my 80th birthday. Disappointment is a part of life. But this affects the grandchildren. They didn't do anything wrong. The grandchildren will still receive gifts from their parents, just like children in families where grandparents don't subsidize the parents' gift giving. They'll be fine." "Mom, $500 is nothing to you, but it makes a huge difference for our Christmas." $500 isn't nothing to me, David. And a simple phone call on my birthday would have meant everything to me. But you couldn't manage that either. David's Christmas budget was suddenly $500 shorter, forcing him to either reduce his children's gifts or find the money elsewhere. But Patricia's crisis was the most revealing because it exposed how much she had been taking advantage of my availability and generosity without ever acknowledging the value of what I provided. Patricia called me in tears about her marriage problems, expecting the same emotional support and advice I had been providing for 20 years whenever her relationship hit rough patches. "Mom, I really need to talk to someone. Can you come over tonight? I need your advice about something important." For 2 decades, I had been Patricia's unpaid therapist, listening to hours of relationship drama, offering advice she rarely took, and providing emotional support during every crisis in her marriage. I had spent countless evenings counseling her through problems that usually resolved themselves within weeks, only to be forgotten until the next crisis arose.
"I'm sorry, Patricia, but I'm not available for emergency counseling sessions anymore." "What are you talking about?"
"I really need to talk to someone who cares about me. Patricia, I cared about you on my 80th birthday too, but that didn't motivate you to call me. If you need someone to talk to, I suggest you call one of the many friends whose birthdays you never forget to celebrate." "Mom, This is serious. My marriage might be in trouble. My feelings were serious too, Patricia. The difference is that your marriage problems happen every few months, while my 80th birthday happened once in my entire lifetime. I can't believe you're being this petty over a birthday. I can't believe you think forgetting your mother's 80th birthday is petty. But I'm supposed to treat your recurring marriage drama as a crisis requiring immediate attention. Patricia hung up on me, but she called back an hour later with a different approach. Mom, I'm sorry about your birthday. I really am. But can we please talk about that later? Right now, I need your help with something urgent. Patricia, if my birthday isn't urgent enough to remember, then your marriage problems aren't urgent enough for me to drop everything and provide free therapy. For the first time in 20 years, Patricia had to handle her marriage crisis without my emotional support and advice. She had to either work through her problems independently or seek help from people who required reciprocal investment in their relationship. As my children struggled to replace the services, support, and financial contributions they had been taking for granted, they began to understand the true value of what they had been receiving from me, without acknowledgement or appreciation. But understanding the value wasn't enough. I needed them to understand that access to that value required treating me with the same consideration they showed to people whose relationships they actually worked to maintain. The next phase of my plan would force them to choose between continuing to take me for granted and learning to treat me with the respect and attention I deserved. 6 weeks after my forgotten birthday, my children requested a family meeting to address what Margaret called my sudden behavior changes and what David described as my unreasonable punishment of the entire family. They had finally realized that my withdrawal wasn't temporary disappointment, but a permanent restructuring of our relationships. The meeting took place in my living room on a Sunday afternoon, with all 3 of my children arriving together, apparently having coordinated their approach to what they clearly viewed as a problem requiring collective solution. Mom, Margaret began with the tone of someone addressing a confused elderly person. We're concerned about you. Your behavior over the past month has been very unlike you. How so? You've been distant, unavailable, and frankly a little hostile. We're wondering if you might be experiencing some depression or other health issues that are affecting your mood. My mental health was being questioned because I had stopped providing free services and unconditional availability to people who couldn't remember my 80th birthday. Margaret, my mental health is fine. What you're interpreting as depression is actually clarity. Clarity about what? David asked. Clarity about the difference between unconditional love and being taken for granted. Clarity about the difference between family relationships and one-sided service arrangements. Patricia jumped in with barely concealed frustration. Mom, we don't understand why you're being so difficult about everything lately. It's like you've become a completely different person. I have become a different person, Patricia. I've become someone who expects reciprocal effort in relationships, instead of accepting whatever scraps of attention people choose to give me. But we're family, Margaret protested. Family relationships are different from other relationships. They don't require the same kind of maintenance. Margaret, if family relationships don't require maintenance, then why are the 3 of you here trying to fix our relationship? The room fell silent as they processed the logic of my question. Mom, David said carefully, we think you're overreacting to the birthday situation. Yes, we made a mistake. Yes, we should have remembered. But this level of retaliation seems excessive. David, describe to me what you think happened on my birthday. We forgot to call you. It was an oversight. David, you didn't just forget to call me. You forgot that your mother existed on the most important birthday of her life. You spent that day celebrating other people, posting about the importance of family, and demonstrating that you knew how to show appreciation when you chose to. You just didn't choose to show any appreciation to me. But we were busy. David, you posted 17 different social media messages that day. You had time to celebrate your neighbor's anniversary, comment on your coworker's promotion, and share articles about the importance of honoring elderly family members. You weren't too busy to show appreciation. You were too busy to show appreciation to me. Patricia tried a different approach. Mom, what do you want from us? What would it take to go back to the way things were? Patricia, I don't want to go back to the way things were. The way things were was me giving 90% of the effort while you gave 10% and assumed that balance was normal. So what do you want? I want reciprocal relationships. I want to be treated with the same consideration you show to people whose relationships you actually value. I want you to invest the same energy in our relationship that you invest in relationships with friends, coworkers, and acquaintances. But Mom, Margaret said with exasperation, those relationships are work relationships, social relationships. They're different from family. Margaret, why are they different? Because family is supposed to love each other unconditionally. Margaret, unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional availability, unconditional service, or unconditional tolerance of being forgotten and overlooked. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with my children trying various approaches to convince me to return to our previous dynamic without acknowledging the fundamental problems that had created this crisis. They offered apologies for forgetting my birthday while simultaneously explaining why the oversight was understandable and shouldn't have ongoing consequences. They promised to do better in the future while avoiding any specific commitments about what better would look like. They suggested that my expectations were unreasonable, while being unable to explain why expecting birthday acknowledgement from my own children was unreasonable. Most tellingly, they focused entirely on what they wanted me to give them: babysitting, financial support, emotional availability, without offering anything they were willing to give me in return. Mom, David said as the meeting was winding down, what happens to our relationship if you don't get whatever it is you're looking for? David, our relationship becomes based on mutual respect and reciprocal effort, or it becomes very limited. You would really cut your own children out of your life over a birthday? David, you really cut your own mother out of your thoughts on her 80th birthday. The difference is that I'm doing it consciously as a consequence of your choices, while you did it unconsciously because I don't matter enough to remember. The meeting ended with my children understanding that their access to my time, energy, and resources would depend on their willingness to treat me with the same consideration they showed to people they actually wanted to maintain relationships with. Some relationships improve when people understand they have to earn continued access rather than simply expecting it. Some relationships end when people realize they're not willing to put in the effort required to maintain them. Either outcome would be better than the one-sided arrangement we had been calling a family relationship for far too long. 3 months after my 80th birthday, our family had settled into a new dynamic that was both healthier and more honest than anything we had experienced in decades. The changes weren't dramatic or revolutionary. They were simple adjustments that reflected mutual respect rather than assumed obligation. Margaret was the first to adapt to the new reality. After scrambling to find childcare for several work emergencies, she realized that my babysitting services had real value that she had never acknowledged or appreciated. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation, and I understand now that I was taking your help for granted. How so? I was treating your availability like it was automatic, like you didn't have a choice about whether to help me. I never thanked you properly, never offered to pay you, and never considered that you might have other things you wanted to do with your time.
Margaret, what made you realize that?
Paying for babysitters for the past month. It cost me almost $400, and the sitters weren't nearly as good with the kids as you are. I realized that you had been giving me services worth thousands of dollars every year without me ever acknowledging the value of what you provided. Margaret's solution was to create a formal arrangement that recognized my babysitting as a valuable service rather than an expected family obligation. Mom, if you're willing to help with childcare again, I'd like to pay you the same rate I pay professional babysitters. And I'd like to ask for your help in advance rather than assuming you'll be available for emergencies. Margaret, I don't need payment, but I do need acknowledgement that my time has value and that helping you is a choice I'm making, not an obligation I'm fulfilling. We developed a system where Margaret asked for help at least 48 hours in advance, always offered payment, which I usually declined, and always expressed genuine gratitude for the assistance. More importantly, she began reciprocating by offering help when I needed it and remembering important dates without being reminded. David's adjustment was different, but equally meaningful. After losing my annual Christmas contribution, he had been forced to budget more carefully and think more creatively about gift-giving. Mom, I realize now that I was depending on your financial help without ever discussing it with you or thanking you properly. David, what changed your perspective? Having to explain to the kids why Christmas was going to be smaller this year. When I told them that Grandma wasn't contributing to gifts anymore, my daughter asked why, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. What did you tell her? I told her that Grandma had been very generous for many years, and that we had been taking that generosity for granted instead of appreciating it properly. David's solution was to transform our financial relationship from assumed support to grateful partnership. Mom, I'd like to ask if you would consider contributing to the grandchildren's gifts again, but I want to do it differently. I want to discuss it with you beforehand. show you what we're planning to buy, and make sure you're comfortable with the amount. And I want to make sure the kids know that their extra special gifts come from your generosity. We created a new arrangement where David presented gift plans for my approval. The grandchildren wrote thank you notes specifically acknowledging my contributions, and David reciprocated by contributing to causes that mattered to me. But Patricia's journey was the most difficult, because she had to confront the reality that our relationship had been almost entirely one-sided for 20 years. Mom, I've been thinking about all the times you listened to me complain about my marriage, my job, my friends, and my problems. I realize now that I never asked about your problems or offered to help you with anything. Patricia, what made you realize that? When I called my sister to talk about my marriage problems, she told me I needed to learn to handle my own emotional crises instead of expecting other people to solve them for me. It made me realize that you had been my unpaid therapist for decades. Patricia's growth required her to develop emotional independence while learning to contribute to our relationship instead of only taking from it. Mom, I want to know about your life, your interests, your concerns. I want our conversations to be about both of us, not just me using you as a sounding board for my problems. Our new relationship included regular conversations where Patricia asked about my activities, offered help with my projects, and shared positive aspects of her life instead of only calling during crises. The most significant change came 6 months after my birthday, when all 3 of my children collaborated on something they had never done before, planning a celebration that was about honoring me rather than fulfilling social obligations. Mom, Margaret called to announce, we're planning a belated 80th birthday celebration for you. A real celebration that recognizes what an important milestone this was and how badly we failed to acknowledge it properly. The party they organized was everything my actual birthday should have been: thoughtful planning, genuine appreciation, and recognition of my importance in their lives. But more meaningful than the celebration was the change it represented in how they thought about our relationships. Instead of assuming I would always be available regardless of how they treated me, they had learned to earn continued access to my time and energy. Instead of taking my contributions for granted, they had learned to acknowledge and reciprocate the support I provided. Instead of saving their best behavior for friends and strangers, they had learned to treat family relationships with the same care and attention they gave to social relationships. The new equilibrium wasn't perfect, and it required ongoing effort from all of us. But it was based on mutual respect rather than assumed obligation, reciprocal investment rather than one-sided service, and conscious choice rather than unconscious expectation. My 80th birthday had been forgotten, but the lesson it taught created a family dynamic that was healthier, more honest, and more sustainable than anything we had experienced before. And that, my dear listeners, is how I turned the worst birthday of my life into the catalyst for the best family relationships I had ever experienced. Sometimes being forgotten is the greatest gift someone can give you, because it clarifies exactly what needs to change and gives you the motivation to demand the respect you deserve. Never accept being taken for granted by people who claim to love you. Never give more to relationships than you receive over the long term. And never forget that even family relationships require ongoing effort, mutual consideration, and reciprocal investment to remain healthy and meaningful. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable people's selfishness and teach them that love requires action, not just assumption. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the knowledge that you deserve to be treated with the same consideration you show to others. I have more stories about setting boundaries with family, demanding reciprocal effort in relationships, and the wisdom that comes with refusing to accept less than you deserve. So subscribe to Betty's True Stories, because the best relationships are not the ones that require no effort. They're the ones where everyone chooses to put in effort because they value what they have together. Growing older doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment people choose to give you. It means having the wisdom to know what you deserve and the courage to insist on receiving it.